Hey, you bunch of goat-kissing milk drinkers. We just wanted to take some time out of your day to make sure that you know that there's another Spoilers podcast. It's called Broken Earth Spoilers, about a book, believe it or not, called Broken Earth. If you haven't read it yet, you're messing up.
It's by N.K. Jemisin. It is a fantastic series. It's a short little trilogy that you can blow through. The whole thing is about the size of 1.5 Wheel of Time books. And it's got a great magic system, great social messages, incredible characters.
And guys, I didn't sleep for like several nights when I was reading these books because they were so good.
One of the things that we were able to do is turn this over to someone, because it's an earth-based magic, to someone who's actually a geologist, someone whose voice you've heard a lot, Aradia.
She can kind of explain some of the things that I had to Google while reading Broken Earth. Because the magic system revolves around the earth and different kinds of rocks and minerals, there's actually quite a bit to it that can be a little difficult to understand without significant Googling. But Aradia breaks all that down for you.
She rocks. If you want to listen, go to BrokenEarthSpoilers.com or look for it in your podcast app. And please give it a rate and review. That's the things we need to get it listened to and get it to a wider audience.
Absolutely. Please rate and review it. Tell people how good you think it is.
Rate it 5 stars and then give us feedback. That's the goal.
Yes, rate it 5 stars, then tell us.
But seriously, these books won 3 Hugo Awards in a row. They're fantastic. Aradia's fantastic. She's got a bunch of episodes in the hopper, so we've got a nice backlog. This is not going to, start and then stutter out. This is going to be going for a while, so it's going to be a whole nother set of stuff to listen to and a whole nother set of spoiler stuff. So I'm very excited about it, in case you can't hear it in my voice.
You've been listening to us talk for like a whole minute. You still haven't gotten downloaded it yet?
Yeah, go. Now.
Google forth into the world.
Broken Earth Spoilers.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
I actually have an absurdly long read into this, because it takes like 2 pages, I feel like, for the point to be made of what's happening for the rest of the chapter. But this is a fairly long one.
But it's a fairly verbose chapter as well. It does take a while for Nynaeve to not make her points.
It's a good way of saying it. Chapter 39, Encounters in Samara, and our symbol is the dragon banner. The white cloaks at the gates gave Uno and Nynaeve no more mind than they gave anyone else in the steady throng, which was to say a cold, suspicious stare, searching, yet quick. Too many people made anything else impossible, and maybe the scale-armored guards did too. Not that there was any reason for more except in her mind. Her great serpent ring and Land's heavy gold ring both nestled in her pouch. The dress's low neckline meant she could not wear them on the thong, but somehow she almost expected Children of the Light to pick out a tower-trained woman by instinct. Her relief was palpable when those icy, unfeeling eyes swept past her. The soldiers paid the 2 of them as little attention. Once she rearranged her shawl yet again, Uno's scowl might have helped send their eyes back to the white cloaks, but the man had no right to scowl in the first place. It was her business. Rewrapping the folded length of gray wool one more time, she tied the ends around her waist. The shawl defined her bosom more than she wished, and still exposed a bit of cleavage, yet it was considerable improvement on the dress alone. At least she would not have to worry about the shawl slipping again, if only the thing were not so hot. The weather really should be turning soon. They were not that far south of the 2 rivers. Uno patiently waited on her for a change. She was of 2 minds as to whether this was simple courtesy. His scarred face looked a deal too patient, but finally they walked together into Samara, into chaos. A babble of noise hung over everything, no one sound distinguishable. People jammed the rough stone-paved streets all but shoulder to shoulder, from slate-roofed taverns to thatch-roofed stables, from raucous inns with simple painted signs like the Blue Bull or the Dancing Goose, to shops where the signs had no words, only a knife and scissors here, a bolt of cloth there, a goldsmith's scales or a barber's razor, a pot or a lamp or a boot. Nynaeve saw faces as pale as that of any Andorman, and as dark as that of any of the sea folk, some clean, some dirty, and coats with high collars, low collars, no collars, drably colored and bright, plain and embroidered, shabby and near new made, in styles strange and often as familiar. One fellow, with a dark forked beard, wore silver chains across the chest of his plain blue coat, and two with their hair in braids. Men, with a black braid over each ear below their shoulders, had tiny brass bells sewn into their red coat sleeves, and the turned-down tops of thigh-high boots. Whatever land they hailed from, these two were not fools. Their dark eyes were hard and searching as Uno's, and they carried curved swords on their backs. A bare-chested man in a bright yellow sash, skin a deeper brown than aged wood, and hands intricately tattooed, had to be one of the sea folk, though he wore neither earrings nor nose-ring. The women were equally as diverse, hair ranging from raven black to yellow so pale it was nearly white, braided or gathered or hanging loose, cut short to the shoulders to the waist, dresses in worn wool or neat linen or shimmering silk, collars brushing chins with lace or embroidery, and necklines every bit as low as the one she hid. She even saw a copper-complexioned Damani woman in a barely opaque red gown that covered her to the neck and hid nothing else. She wondered how safe that woman would be after dark, or in this broad daylight, for that matter. The occasional white cloaks and soldiers in the milling mass seemed overwhelmed, struggling to make ground as hard as anyone else. Ox carts and horse-drawn wagons inched along the haphazardly crisscrossing streets. Bearers jostled sedan chairs through the crowds, and now and then a lacquered coach with a plumed team of 4 or 6 made its laborious way, liveried footmen and steel-capped guards vainly trying to clear a path. Musicians with flute or zither or bittern played at every corner, where there was not a juggler or an acrobat. Their skill certainly nothing to make Tom or the Chivanas worry, always with another man or woman holding out a cap for coins. Ragged beggars wove through it all, plucking at sleeves and proffering grimy hands, and hawkers bustled with trays of everything from pins to ribbons to pears, their cries lost in the din. Her head spun by the time Uno drew her into a narrower street, where the throng seemed thinner, if only by comparison. She paused to straighten her clothes, disarrayed from plunging through the crowd, before following him. It was a trifle quieter here, too. No street entertainers, and few hawkers and beggars. Beggars kept clear of Uno, even after he tossed a few coppers to a wary pack of urchins, for which she did not blame them. The man just did not look charitable. The town's buildings loomed over these narrow ways, despite being only 2 or 3 stories, putting the streets themselves in shadow, but there was good light in the sky, hours yet till dusk, still plenty of time to get back to the show, if she had to. With luck, they could all be boarding a riverboat by sunset. She gave a start when another Shinaran suddenly joined them, a sword on his back, and head shaven but for that topknot, a dark-haired man only a few years older than she. Uno gave curt introductions, an explanation, without slowing. "Peace favor you, Nynaeve," Regan said, the skin of his dark cheek dimpling around a triangular white scar, even smiling. His face was hard. She had never met a soft Shinaran. Soft men did not survive along the Blight, nor soft women either. "I remember you. Your hair was different, was it not? No matter, never fear. We will see you safely to Messima, and to wherever you would go after. Just be sure not to mention Tarvalin to him." No one was sparing them a second glance, but he lowered his voice anyway. "Messima thinks the tower will try to control the Lord Dragon." And that's where I decided to leave it. Sorry, that was like 3.5 pages. But that just sets the scene there.
So, a few things I want to talk about is, one, this chapter has an awful lot of shawl adjusting and bosom showing and unshowing.
Bosoms?
Bosoms. Possibly an unnecessarily large amount of it. Bazooms.
That's a better spelling.
Brazier.
Oh, yeah, God, guys, in the audiobook, the only thing the author got back to us to when we were like, here's the first couple of files, let us know if there's any changes you want. She was like, yes, it's brazier, not brazier. I was like, oh, shit, I did that a lot, didn't I?
And that it was in the book a lot. Like, that was definitely like one of the big...
Brazier.
Brazier.
Guys, they're like the same word.
And so there were things like lighting her brazier on fire.
Yeah. So he lit his brazier and inhaled the... Not quite, Patrick. Not almost.
No, almost. And I didn't catch it at all. I was listening along. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Brazier is with a Z. Brazier is with an S.
Very different word.
I learned the difference.
We both did. So she can't wear her necklace on a thong around her neck. She could wear it on a different kind of thong.
That doesn't seem like it would be comfortable.
No, not at all.
A thong of leather.
A couple more comments about how the weather should be getting colder, but it's not. It's not totally unusual yet, but maybe it is because they're far south. So it does seem to be that we're starting to sense the Dark One's touch. The few comments in the beginning of this, we're talking about the fires of heaven. Everything's getting hotter. That's sort of one of the meanings of the title of this book, as well as the lightning that comes down from the sky when they attack Ravine. But I do think that this is sort of the point of this book, is throughout the whole thing, everything's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and we're getting more comments on that.
I agree.
A lot of comments on the various people, cultures, the guys with braids in their hair are Kandori. We see some pale Andorman and dark sea folk.
I enjoyed the long description, even though I made fun of it a little. I always do. I just feel slightly bad when I do a read-in and RJ gives us 2 pages of just describing where they walk through, but the rest of the chapter happens in a single room, basically. So it just describes Samara. It's, a bustling... It's a large, bustling city with, warring factions inside of it. You've got your white cloaks and your prophet converts, and then you got the actual government all kind of vying. And it just describes that and the trade.
And reading through that and Nynaeve's thoughts made me realize, and this section is where I realized, she's really taking risks because she does not want to go back to the show and be shot at. This sentence in particular, with luck, they could all be boarding a riverboat by sunset. She's sort of got that, like, yeah, I got time. I can go talk to the prophet and arrange a boat and go back and be in the show and get out of here. Totally, yeah, I got time. And it's like, no, you really don't, Nynaeve. Like you're rushing this and you're not thinking it through, and something's gonna go wrong,
as it often does.
Yeah.
The Ch39s meet with Nynaeve, other than Massima, of course, and they kind of escort her in, which is the only reason she's allowed in. And we find that Una's saying things as they walk in, like, the street out front will be full of bloody fools hoping to catch a glimpse of Massima at a bloody window. The only way to get in is by the back. And then we see descriptions of the people that are hanging around this area who are like, I assume Massima's like inner circle of fervent zealots. Yeah. I don't know. They had disturbing eyes, too intent, almost feverish.
Is Massima ever exposed to Fane? I don't think... I mean, I know they're both in Faldara at the same time.
It sure does feel like it, but I don't think so.
But as far as I can tell, they're not exposed to each other.
No, I don't think that ever happens.
No. But, a lot of what Massima does feels very Mordeth-like. He's sort of got this fight evil by using the tactics of evil.
Kind of, yeah. I think it's not quite the same.
No, it's more of a false prophet, really.
I see him as he's a tough, hardened soldier who's converted to religion, essentially, or makes a religion, more or less. And so his interpretations of things are as dark as you might expect for somebody who's spent his entire life learning to effectively kill.
And I think we were also speculating in the last chapter that he was being manipulated by one of the Forsaken.
Yeah.
In his dreams.
Has to be. And we do see one of the dreams once, I believe.
Yeah, right at the end of the series. We see him at least reference the sparkly dragon in his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
The question I think we came to last time was we weren't sure how early he was being influenced. But again, at this point, we are significantly through the time frame. We are a year and a half into the 2-year time frame. So one would assume at this point that a lot of the manipulation has happened and has been occurring in his dreams. So even if it didn't happen right away, at this point, he is being manipulated.
Yeah, he essentially believes he's receiving divine messages, which are actually coming from...
Forsaken.
We presume the Chosen.
Yeah.
Who would be capable of doing such a thing.
Excuse me, dark friend, the Chosen? Forsaken. Don't give yourself away like that.
I'm a friend of the darkness.
We do say hello, friends of the dark, whenever you do an ad read.
It's turned into our thing. I like it. It makes it feel like, tight-knit little club of dark friends.
Yep. I like how Reagan's like, all right, just watch your mouth. Watch what you say when you go in there. And she's like, I can do that. And they're both like, uh-huh.
She does not.
No.
They're all disarmed as they enter the building. There have apparently been attempts on the Prophet's life, so no one's allowed to hold a weapon within his presence at all. The guards scowl at Nynaeve's belt knife, but they do let her go. I think that's the Ch39 influence there.
Yeah, the deference towards a woman.
Because she's a woman, she's allowed to carry the knife where no one else would be able to.
And we see a lot of this sort of surface level austerity from the Prophet. This, like, he eats shitty food, he only has one shitty servant, he lives in a shitty place wherever anyone gives him. But it's like, it's so dishonest because he has all this power. He has all this money at his disposal. And, like she says, giving money to one widow doesn't count for a lot when he widows hundreds of people. It's just, it's such a hypocritical way of living to me. To be like, think you're doing good by living austerely when in reality you're causing all sorts of issues well above and beyond your austerity.
Yeah, there's something weird about it. It all feels very culty right off the bat. You have this old warrior sitting on the floor and everyone bends over backwards to do what he says, to the point where Uno, I believe, warns Nynaeve later that if Masema, the prophet of the dragon, says that, someone ought to do something about this, like 100 men will stand up and go and try to do it. He doesn't often even give instructions. He just says, it should be this way, and people will go and try to execute that non-order. Culty or mobby, say like, someone ought to take care of that guy. He's causing a lot of problems for us. But you don't say, go and murder that guy, because if someone's wearing a wire, then you're implicated. But if you just say, man, I wish someone would take care of that guy, you technically didn't instruct anyone to kill him.
I'd like you to do us a favor, though. I kind of expect Tyler Durden to be walking around the back being like, you are not your job. You are not how much money you have. You're not the car you drive. Khakis. You're not your fucking khakis. You are the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world.
It's another movie I watch once a year. We were talking about The Fifth Element right before we kicked on recording with some of our listeners.
It's like a classic.
Fifth Element, Fight Club.
Fifth Element, yeah. A bunch of, low-skilled people rebelling and doing it, living in the shithole and just breaking shit without any real agenda.
Space Monkey. Sacrificing himself for the greater good. Nynaeve walks in, or is escorted in, as, to her knowledge, a well-to-do noblewoman is talking to the Prophet. We find out later that this is Alejandra herself, Queen of Gildan. Although she was only risen to queen, last month or something.
Yeah. And only because she accommodated the Prophet.
She has presumably only kept that position because her first act as queen was to go to the Prophet and be like, hey, all those other guys that were trying to kill you, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I'll do whatever you say.
So she's still around.
Yeah. And so he's almost turned her entirely into a figurehead because she has no power other than what the Prophet gives her. But that's better than being a dead queen.
Right, or perhaps even being a puppet of the White Cloaks.
And this gives her an opportunity to claw some of that power back from the Prophet, especially when he leaves.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much you would want to get into, like, we see Massima scold Alejandra for wearing all these rich things, and how she should give over her life. The last battle's coming. Our Lord is here.
And that's all her strategy, is to show up in gold. So he takes, like, jewels and gems, which are expensive but not worth, like, the cash he would just literally take from her, instead of raising taxes.
Right, so basically what I see happening here, Massima is a mob boss, and if you want to do anything in the mob boss's town, you have to ask him first. And when you show up, the mob boss will probably say, yeah, okay, but I want that nice watch you're wearing. And you do it, because it's either that or you don't leave alive at all, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You give the guy the gold watch, and then you get to open up a new business. And that's that.
And what she ends up doing is essentially, when the new mob boss rolls into town, Perrin, and takes over from the old one, she just transfers her allegiance to the new, slightly nicer mob boss.
And yeah, I mean, hey, whenever this comes up, I always seek to clarify that I'm not talking bad about the mob, really, even, because governments do the exact same thing.
Especially if the mob is listening.
We want to run our business, we have to pay those guys every year. We got to give them a gold watch, essentially. And then we get to continue paying them money to run our business.
The idea with the government, though, is that you put money into it and they don't keep it for themselves. They put it back into services for the people.
Well, right, and there's supposed to be oversight. Whereas with a mob boss, there is no oversight. He is the oversight.
But that's where, in a lot of cases, especially some terrorist groups in the Middle East, there's the line between government and mob is, in a lot of cases, very thin. Very thin. When you have a very corrupt government and a mob that actually takes care of people, it's like, ouch.
It's the same. Every time this comes up, I love making that point, that it's really hard to distinguish what's the difference between paying taxes and being extorted. I don't know that there really is one. I mean, the effects are essentially the same, right? If I don't pay my taxes, they come steal my shit and maybe lock me in a box for a while.
And I would say the difference is what you get from it, right? The idea is, like, if you pay taxes, you actually get something from that. You have roads to drive on, you have plumbing, you have infrastructure and government and security, supposedly from the police, although there are issues with all of those things in this country. But the idea is you get those in return for paying taxes, as opposed to the mob, where all you get to do is keep doing what you would be doing anyway.
And, you pay your protection money, and you'll be protected. If someone else tries to open up a competing restaurant near yours, be a shame if someone were to set fire to it.
Well, until they pay the mob to set fire, pay more to the mob to set fire to yours.
It is quite interesting how unclear the line is.
Yes, and how much we're able to debate it.
Because my point is, it's the same. We're just a slight improvement. That's what we have.
He's arguing for anarchy. He's essentially said the Lord Dragon has destroyed any vows. Basically we have no debts. So basically Massima's saying, like, don't pay your banks.
There are no such thing as laws anymore. There's only one law.
It's what I say the law is.
Basically, yeah.
Or what I say the dragon says the law is, which is...
following the dragon through me.
Which is the claim of a lot of religious leaders. So don't follow the worldly law, follow the heavenly law. The heavenly law is above the worldly law. And by the way, I tell you what heavenly law is. And so we get a bit of him, henceforth a man who steals will have his right hand cut off. Interferes with a woman, insults her honor, will be hung.
You will clap until you can no longer clap.
The beatings will continue until morale improves. Submission and obedience to the word of the Lord Dragon. All else is useless, even where it's not blasphemy. He goes on and on and on. This is ranting. We're all equal, but you have to listen to me.
Yeah, I actually, on that point, I'm going to read a couple of lines that, as the Shinarns come together, Massima, Reagan, Uno, I think there may be one other here, but not particularly important. The skinny man scampered back to his place by the door as the other three men shook hands in the Borderlands fashion, gripping forearms. Peace favor your sword, Uno said, echoed by Regan. Peace favor the Lord Dragon, was the reply, and his light illumine us all. Nynaeve's breath caught. There was no doubt to his meaning, that the Lord Dragon was the source of the light, and he had the nerve to speak of blasphemy from others. Have you come to the light at last? We walk in the light, Regan said carefully. As always. Uno kept silent, his face blank. I liked that a lot because it just shows it displays very well the tension in the room where Massima's getting all high and mighty, but he's still with these old warriors like Uno, who are like Uno, who refuses to reply whatsoever.
Right.
And Regan, the young guy, who says, we walk in the light as we always have. Like, we walked in the light to get here, and if we leave, we'll still be walking in the light, Massima. But he doesn't say it quite that way. I felt that was the implication there. And Uno just stares at them both dead-faced. So you're both idiots. Massima, you're an idiot for spouting this garbage, and Regan, you're an idiot for placating him.
Well, and don't forget, one of the reasons he's so intent on the dragon being the source of the light is he has what we're assuming is the shiny dragon in his dreams telling him what to do. And he's like, that dragon in particular, who's talking to me in my dreams, who's shiny, is the source of the light and the source of all truth. And we have to do what he says.
Yeah.
You know, he's not just making this up so he has control. He's literally seeing, knowing about the shiny dragon, how literal he's talking here.
Total conviction filled the man's voice, and this close, she could see a glint in his nearly black eyes that bordered on madness.
You have seen the light of the Lord Dragon, and only those whose souls are swallowed in the shadow can see and not believe. You are not such, you will believe. And it's this binary, like, if you've seen the Lord Dragon, you have to believe what Massima believes, otherwise you're corrupted by the shadow.
Yeah. I'm going to read a little more, because I love Nynaeve, and maybe a little bit for the ladies.
Oh yeah, this is
when
like
Massima says.
After all that, Nynaeve just backs Maxim with her. She just takes him down with her verbal arguing. Just like, are you kidding me? You're crazy stupid.
You, woman, are you ready to come to the light of the Lord Dragon, abandoning sin and flesh? I walk in the light as best I can. She was irritated to find herself speaking as carefully as Regan. Sin? Who did he think he was? You are too concerned with the flesh. Massima's gaze was withering as if it swept over her red dress and the shawl wrapped tightly around her. And what do you mean by that? Uno's eye widened in startlement, and Regan made small shushing motions, yet she could as soon have flown as stopped. Do you think you have a right to tell me how to dress? Before she quite realized what she was doing, she had untied the shawl and looped it around her elbows. It really was much too hot, anyway. No man has that right. For me, or any other woman. If I choose to go naked, it would be none of your concern. Massima contemplated her bosom for a moment, not so much as a hint of admiration in his deep eyes, only acid contempt, then raised that stare to her face. Uno's real eye and painted eye made a perfect match, scowling at nothing, and Regan winced, surely muttering to himself inside his head. I just appreciated that, like, Nynaeve is dragged into the what I liked thinking of as the mob boss's house, and he's like, could you rethink your wardrobe? And she's like, how about instead you go F yourself?
Exactly.
It's like, Jesus, Nynaeve, he could kill you at any second. Like, I get it, stand up for yourself, but maybe not always, And
Uno and Regan are like, come on, let's go, get out of here before she kills us all. Like, it's not good, not good. So much for guarding her tongue.
Whoa.
And then
Lady, he's got a gun. Like, maybe just nod and smile,
Something in the back of her mind shouted to her not to be complete woolhead. Only men let pride overcome common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's because that's not what just happened to you there, Nynaeve. Not at all. Oh, the hypocriticalness is just tasty,
it's just a straight-up human thing, as it turns out.
Oh, God, it's so wonderful. But we love her not taking crap from Massima.
Megs, I love it, too, that she just doesn't take any crap from anyone for any reason.
Of course, he goes off on his rant, and Uno's like, dude, she raised the Dragon Reborn? She, wiped his ass when he was a baby?
Literally.
Literally. Like, if there's someone that you are going to call corrupt, this might not be the right person. She's basically his mother.
Masima turns around and says some stuff like, such garments are worn to entice men and for no other reason. Thoughts of the flesh distract the mind from the Lord Dragon and the light. I have considered banning dresses that distract men's eyes and minds.
Try not looking, buddy.
Yeah, right. And Uno cuts in and says, this is Nynaeve Almira, Uno said quickly, into the first pause for breath, from Emond's Field, in the Two Rivers, whence the Lord Dragon comes. She was at Valdara with the Lord Dragon, and at Falma. The Lord Dragon rescued her at Falma. The Lord Dragon cares for her as a mother. I don't know if I read that all perfectly, but yeah, basically bringing up the point that, like, yeah, when the Lord Dragon when the Lord Dragon needed his diaper changed, this girl,
yeah,
like, so, you know, this big fancy god that you're worshiping, this one changed his diapers, so maybe just, you know, reconsider your angle here.
And of course, Masima immediately turns to her and goes, "Tell us about his miraculous rainbow poop." And she's like, "It was poop.
Ain't nothing rainbow about it.
I don't know what you want. Like, nothing rainbow about it. Like,
he was a regular baby.
Tell us that his shit don't stink." No, it stank. It was.
And somewhere in here, I'm not even going to bother really looking for it, but somewhere in here, I think Masima says, like, "Tell us of his wise words," and this, that, and the other thing, and Nynaeve's thinking, like, the only wise words I ever heard him say was when he promised not to throw a rock at anyone else ever again.
Yeah.
After I paddled his bottom for doing so.
Him.
Yeah.
The only thing wise he ever said was, "Yes, ma'am."
After that, he was just kind of coasting, yeah. Can't think of anything else smart.
And so then she kind of puts a bit of a cap on her temper and starts to maybe Aes Sedai Masima a little bit and be like, I need something. I'm summoned, right? I'm summoned by, which Nynaeve would never, ever say she was summoned by Rand unless she absolutely was like putting some sort of effort into calming her tongue down and being like, yeah, I have to go do this thing. So will you help me for the sake of the Lord Dragon?
Another reason I like this chapter is because I feel like there's another little crux point in Nynaeve's development as a human being when she's having this back and forth with Masima and it's not going well, and she has the thought, "A man is an oak, a woman a willow," the saying ran. The oak fought the wind and was broken, while the willow bent when it must, and it survived. That did not mean she had to like bending. And then she starts talking again.
I like that pause. That did not mean she had to like it.
She's like, "I must bend. I will hate it while I do it, but I will if it gets me that goddamn boat."
I tell you what, Nynaeve is the thickest willow I have ever seen. She does not bend easily.
The wind blows, the willow frowns, and the wind goes somewhere else. So Nynaeve kind of dissembles and says, "I cannot wait. I have been summoned, and when the Lord Dragon summons, mere mortals must obey." So now she's speaking Masima's language, doing the smart thing.
Yeah.
Although none of that is true. She has not been summoned.
No, not at all. She's lying.
Or even, requested. Like,
I mean, I guess technically Rand wants Elaine?
I think Rand would have been well served to keep Nynaeve in his council. Even, for instance, would she had been with him at this moment, I think it's very helpful to him, especially in the long run, to have Nynaeve around. He trusts her, and he trusts very few people. But Nynaeve had to go and do the things that she did. All this stuff is really important. As much as people like to denigrate these chapters online, the menagerie and all that, this is a menagerie chapter, and none of it actually has to do with the menagerie.
Quick question. Where's Loyal right now? I lost track of him at some point. Is he in Kyrian with Rand?
Loyal is with Perrin.
Oh, okay.
It took me a full minute.
That's why. So this is a no Perrin book, and Loyal is with, so it's a no Loyal, no Perrin. Aw, makes me sad. So he's traveling from the Two Rivers to...
I'm kind of glad you brought that up, though, because I think Loyal may be one of the very few people that Rand actually trusts. He trusts Loyal. He trusts Nynaeve.
Tam.
Matt, Perrin.
You know, not so much sure he trusts Matt and Perrin as he he uses them.
Close enough. He doesn't ever seem to get particularly paranoid about those two, or Nynaeve or Loyal. Basically everyone else he's skeptical about, including Lan, sadly, but it's because he's tied to the White Tower, and Rand rightly believes that if the White Tower forced Lan to do what they wanted him to, he would have to. He wouldn't have a choice, really. Same with Moraine. I think even Rand understands that Moraine does have his best interests at heart, but that doesn't mean that everything that Moraine thinks is correct or right or a good move. And Rand also mistrusts her association with the White Tower. Who is this nebulous power that...
It's kind of funny, he really can't trust Lan until after Moraine disappears, or quote-unquote dies. But that's when Lan disappears, because Lan takes off on his cross-country quest to go find Muriel.
Yeah, it's almost too bad that he couldn't have been surrounded by the right ones at the right times to change the entire series, but that wouldn't have created a lot of conflict if he had everything he needed exactly when he needed it.
No, and a lot of the mental trauma he goes through that leads up to Veins of Gold, and the mental trauma that the Dark One is trying to put him through is to do what he's doing, which is separate him from his loved ones and isolate him, and
he has to figure his own way. And I think honestly, probably the best thing to happen to him were Cadsuane and Sorleia, who, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this, but essentially beat him into submission. Not literally, but figuratively. They get him to come around and start acting like a human again, or at least start thinking along the right lines so that he eventually Veins of Gold.
So essentially, she flings Masema at trying to find her a river, and he kind of writes it off as someone will tell me about it if one's found, but we know that's not what he ends up trying to seize it when he does finally find it. And then that's the last thing before Uno and Reagan yank her out of there before she says anything else stupid.
Yeah. I'll read another little bit for some more flavor in here. This is Masema talking. You must see that she is safe until then. If she persists in clothing herself in this manner, she will attract men with vile thoughts. She must be protected, like a wayward child, until she is reunited with the Lord Dragon. Nynaeve bit her tongue. A willow, not an oak, when a willow was needed.
Very thick willow there.
Yeah, good very spice.
Yep.
And gosh, I'm just going to say this again. I know I brought it up like 10 minutes ago, but Nynaeve not saying what she thinks when she thinks it. This is an important part of her development. That she realizes that it's not important to just yell your opinions at people. That doesn't actually get anything to happen. What you need is a boat. This guy can get you one. He wants to think that he needs to protect you? Fine. Let him give you a bunch of bodyguards. Fine.
It's a lesson I could learn.
Then you get a boat. Then you leave.
I tend to mostly just yell at people until they do what I want. Need to manipulate them better.
Instead, he gives Masema what he wants, which is nothing. And a guard set on her. 3 hard Shinarans. Almost too bad she doesn't take them with her.
I mean, she basically does from then on out. I mean, they're not with her the whole way, but don't they end up following her?
Do they go all the way to Tyr?
Yeah.
I don't remember now. They go all the way to Tyr with her? Uno, Reagan, isn't there one more?
Basically, when they end up in Saladar, Uno's there ready to offer to pull him out. He's like, I'll steal you some horses and get you out of there. And they're only there because they followed the girls there the whole time. And he becomes a general in the Saladar, the Rebel Tower army, Uno does. And that's all because he followed Nynaeve.
Oh gosh, I don't even remember that.
And there's a
Aradia says it's probably 5 or more Shinarans. It's not just Masema, or I keep saying Masema, Uno and Reagan.
Yeah, Uno, Reagan, and Masema, and one other were sort of the 4 that we met early on, and it's them plus a bunch more. But these are all the ones who were with Rand, who followed him away from Shinar into the mountains.
Right, same group.
Did we get a little bit of background from Uno about what has been going on and how Masema rose to power?
Yeah, I feel like we talked about this a good amount. Probably important to mention that Alejandra is the third monarch to rise in like the last 6 months or something like that. Fourth. And they all died after opposing the prophet for one reason or another. And, car accident. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
One of them didn't die, got just married a commoner, so she couldn't be nobility
anymore. That's right. She, challenged Massima, raised an army, her army was routed, and then she left and married a rich guy.
Yep. And then Alejandra's the fourth, and then the first two were killed.
Alejandra's the first to try to reach a hand across the aisle, for lack of a better term, and that's the reason she's still standing, literally.
And she ends up pledged to Perrin. She's one of the three queens that pledges to him.
Yeah, one of the three.
That's much later on. And she becomes one of Fael's sort of liege women when they're in the Shido camp. So her and Megden, aka
Morghese,
Queen of Andor. Forgot her real name there for a second. That's weird.
Yeah, well, Queen of Andor for another week or so.
She's not even really. I guess once
is she out already?
She's out. The only question is, when does she technically resign her position? Right now, Pedron Nile has her.
Oh gosh, yeah, I guess that is happening already.
Mm-hmm. And once Pedron Nile gets assassinated and Valda takes over, that's when she speaks the words and gives up her crown. But I mean, she is definitely not in charge anymore, right? She's definitely not technically a queen. Hasn't been a queen for a while. Yeah,
hasn't been for a long time. I'm going to read a little bit more of Nynaeve because this is really fun, and this chapter is basically over.
Yeah, it's just some fun Nynaeve stuff.
So they're leaving. The couple of Shinarans are hustling her out, and she's annoyed by it. But they're like, "Yeah, you're lucky that he let you go, and we're hustling you out." Even though Nynaeve's complaining the whole time, because if you had kept talking shit to the mob boss, we don't know what might have happened, but we could take a real good guess at it. So they're hustling her out, and she's kind of resigned to it at this point. But she says, still, curiosity made her say, does he mean that? About trying to stop men and women looking at one another? What does he think will happen if there are no marriages, no children? Will he stop people farming next, or weaving, or making shoes, so they can think about Randall Thor? She enunciated the name deliberately. These two went around calling him the Lord Dragon at the top of a pin, almost as much as Massima did. I will tell you this. If he tries telling women how to dress, he will start a riot against him. Just wanted to throw that out there, because Nynaeve is lovely.
Oh, yeah, but she's wrong. He's done terrible things to these people. They are brainwashed.
Oh, sure.
They let themselves be brainwashed far beyond that.
But I feel in this that there's a certain part of her, although it's definitely an angry diatribe that she's just following this down logically. She's right. I mean, she's right to call into question, does he really think he's going to stop men and women from looking at each other? What happens if he succeeds? What happens if he succeeds in that? Then no more people. That's how that works, right?
Yeah, he's a zealot. I mean, it's
a stupid idea. It's, if you follow it to its logical conclusion, if he succeeds in what he's trying to do, then everyone dies.
But like all religious zealots, he is separating procreation from lust and saying basically yeah, of course you're going to get married and breed. You're going to make more people. But don't be lustful while you're doing it.
Don't like it.
Don't like it
doing it.
Yeah. Think about the Lord Dragon while you're doing it. Leave room for Rand.
Lay back and think of England.
Lay back and think of Andor.
Lay back and think of Andor. I like it. And we do see later, he's an against bloody marriage, Uno growled, staring so hard at a peddler with meat pies on a tray that the man turned and ran without taking the coins from two women holding pies in their hands. You're lucky he did not remember you have no husband, or he might have sent you to the Lord Dragon with one. Sometimes he picks out 300 or 400 unmarried men, and as many women, and flaming well marries them. Most have never seen each other before that day. If the pigeon-gutted dirt grubbers didn't bloody complain about that, do you think they'll open their flaming mouths about ale?
Better hope none of them are gay. Jesus. Well, that's the thing. It's all about procreation. It's marriage for the sake of making children and family, not for the sake of enjoyment.
Yeah, but I feel like Nynaeve is beginning to pare it down to the real point, and that it's this whole thing really is about fear. It's not about faith. It's not about saving the world. It's about fear.
Yeah.
And that's why Masema needs to be followed, because if you don't do what he says, really awful things happen to you.
I might argue that all religion is about fear. But it's hard not to see Masema as a Christian analog.
I feel like that's what RJ is handing us. I'm just trying to interpret it in a different way.
Well, it is. I mean, it's hard not to. We have to acknowledge that there's so many parallels between Masema as a religious zealot for one true God.
The kind of grifter preacher that preys on people. You know, and religion sometimes has a good place in various societies. And what Masema is a perfect representation of the worst possible way religion can be used to help govern a otherwise lawless society in a culty way filled with fear and hate, as opposed to, you know...
And that leads to the dark side.
Love thy neighbor and feed the poor and all that, all the nice things. Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would add is that Uno makes sure, although Nynaeve isn't speaking well of her, Uno says, Alejandra was not a fool. She was a wise woman. When you bloody find yourself straddling a wild horse, you bloody well ride it the way it's bloody going. If you're smart enough to pour water out of a bloody boot. You think she's a fool because Masema took her rings? She's flaming smart enough to know he might demand more if she stopped wearing jewelry. The first time, he went to her. Been the other way around since. Just to drive the point home. Oh, you think she's stupid? You think she's stupid? You think you could do better?
She's saving tons of money by giving him all this jewelry. She's not paying all the taxes. Yeah.
All right, and I'm skipping about a paragraph, and I believe this is Nynaeve talking. Yes, it is. She says, starts with, that doesn't sound so wise to me. A couple lines later, is she the queen? Or isn't she? The two men exchanged those irritating looks, and Regan said quietly, you don't understand, Nynaeve. Alejandra is the fourth to sit on the light-blessed throne since we came to Gildan, and that's barely half a year. Johannan wore the crown when Masema began attracting a few crowds, but he thought Masema a harmless madman, and did nothing, even when the crowds grew, and his nobles told him he had to put an end to it. Johannan died in a hunting accident. Hunting accident, Uno interjected, sneering. A hawker, who happened to be looking at him, dropped his tray of pins and needles. Not unless he didn't know one bloody end of a flaming boar spear from the other. Flaming Southlanders and their flaming game of houses. And Elazil succeeded, Regan took up. She had the army dispersing the crowds, until finally there was a pitched battle, and it was the army that was chased off. Bloody poor excuse for soldiers, Uno muttered. She was going to have to speak to him about his language again. Regan nodded in agreement, but went on with what he had been saying. They say Elazil took poison after that, but however she died, she was replaced by Teresia, who lasted a full 10 days after her coronation, just until she had a chance to send 2,000 soldiers against 10,000 folk who had gathered near Masema outside Gehenna. After her soldiers were routed, she abdicated to marry a rich merchant. Nynaeve stared at him incredulously, and Uno snorted. That is what they say, the younger man maintained. Of course, in this land, marrying a commoner means giving up any claim to the throne forever, and whatever Baron Goriad feels about having a pretty young wife with royal blood, I hear he was dragged from his bed by a score of Alejandra's retainers and hauled to the Jada Palace for a wedding in the small hours of the morning. Teresia went off to live on her new husband's country estate, while Alejandra was being crowned, all before sunrise, and the new queen summoned Masema to the palace to tell him he would not be troubled again. Inside 2 weeks, she was calling on him. I do not know whether she really believes what he preaches, but I know she took the throne of a land on the edge of civil war, with white cloaks ready to move in, and she stopped it the only way she could. That is a wise queen, and a man should be proud to serve her, even if she is a Southlander. Nynaeve opened her mouth, and forgot what she was going to say when Uno said in a casual tone, "There's a flaming white cloak following us. Don't look around, woman. You have more bloody sense than that." Her neck stiffened with the effort of keeping her eyes forward. Prickles crawled up her back. "Take the next turn, Uno. That carries us away from the main streets and the flaming gates. We can flaming lose him in the crowds. Take it!" She inhaled slowly, made her voice less shrill. "I need a sight of him." Uno glowered so fiercely that people stepped out of their way for 10 paces ahead, but then they turned, down the next narrow street. She shifted her head a trifle as they made the turn, just enough to peek from the edge of her eye before the corner of a small stone tavern cut off her view. The snowy cloak with the flaring sun stood out among the thin crowd. There was no mistaking that beautiful face, the face she had been sure she would see. No other white cloak than Galad would have a reason to follow her, and none to follow Uno or Regan. I don't care what the internet says. The Menagerie chapters are kind of awesome.
They're kind of great. I'm kind of loving them. There's so, I mean, between, we had a Dark Friend social, or a Forsaken social, we had Nynaeve being awesome, we have Uno cursing up a freaking storm. There's just so much fun stuff in this.
I just, guys, I don't have the right words, but Nynaeve is just such a tough bitch. I love her. She will fucking fight you. Like, you can cut her off from the source, she will punch you in the face. How do you not love that?
Criticize her dress, and she will show you her boobs.
And she changed the Savior's diapers. I mean, what more can you ask for?
And she what?
Change the Savior's diapers?
Oh, yes.
I mean, wait for your salvation and all that, He is just Rand, I get it, but...
No, and she saves Lan's life, and, all the accomplishments that she does later with the cleansing of the source, and the supporting of the dragon during the last battle, and keeping him sane, cleansing madness, healing, stilling. Do we need to keep going?
Bunch of airsick lowlanders. I'm an airsick lowlander. Lived my whole life at 400 feet above sea level. Yeah, oxygen's nice. That was my theory for why I found myself hiking up some mountains on the west coast. I got to 8,000 feet and started feeling sick, and everyone around me was fine. Because most people grow up higher above sea level than 100 feet, I think I was born at. And I think Portland is 500 feet or something like that. It's my theory anyway. Maybe some people are just genetically bad at it. It's possible too.
It's something you can acclimate to over time, and something that you can lose acclimation to. So
it took me a month of going slow, but I just tried to sleep at the highest elevation of the day every night. And eventually I stopped getting sick. I feel we're relatively lucky with that in Portland. There's so much water, but it flows, so it doesn't ever really flood here. Sometimes the river gets high, but I've never seen it even near the bank.
I feel we have enough elevation and enough hills.
Aradia says 96 was bad. I believe you. I wasn't here.
Didn't we also have decent irrigation recently completed? The big tunnel or whatever?
There has been a lot of work done. I know that over the last 10 or 15 years, just as far as drainage and stuff. But if it rains hard for a couple of days, my basement floor will get damp. But that's about it, which seems wild for a place where it rains half of all days.
It also has to do with the soil, I think. I feel we have decent drainage.
Yeah, I think it drains really well, and we basically sit where two rivers cross, right at that point, so all the water just goes right out to the ocean, Oh, whoa. Yeah, Google says 50 feet. I thought it was like 10 times that, which isn't even that high. 500 feet above sea level.
Because, like, we have to go over hills to get to sea level, but basically we go up and then come back down again, and then we're at the ocean. There's no real overall change. We just have to get over the...
Got that nice Rocky Mountain wall.
Kind of like the Shenandoah Valley where I was out in Virginia.
That's possibly my second favorite place in the United States. Shenandoah River Valley is gorgeous.
Yeah, it was really pretty there. It's just a shame about the people. Wish that was a joke.
Yeah, it's a different world down there. Stop in these, like, remote towns, and there'd be, like, a general store, a bar, a gas station, and 9 churches. What? You need more churches than gasoline? Big part of having a social group, I think, in that region. I remember a lot of the hostels and stuff were in church basements and had weird rules about sleeping near girls you're not married to and stuff. It was a little bizarre. They sure are. Everybody gets sick. Hiking through that area. Bound to get something. I was actually pretty lucky. I only got something called, I think it was called the norovirus.
Oh, yeah, I remember the norovirus.
Which is just from, if you just, like, if your lips or nostrils or anything just makes contact with, like, tepid water, which you can't avoid. I mean, you know, you're splashing through puddles, whatever. You get basically the flu. It sucked, but I realized I was sick while I was in a hostel, so I was very lucky. I just paid up for the next couple of days and...
recovered.
Yeah, laid down. Felt crappy for 2 days.
Well, if you've been hiking and you're sick, it's like your body, you're short on reserves anyway, and then trying to fight off a sickness on top of that.
Yeah, a lot of people got really sick.
Yeah.
Just hanging out with this girl that got Giardia real bad.
I don't know what Giardia is.
Which is it's a parasite that you can get from drinking unclean water. Which, everyone that got Giardia, I was like, you're just an idiot. Like, that's... Clean your water, dude. Like, there's...
It's not that hard to clean your water. And
the runoff from cattle fields, dudes.
Yeah.
Like, clean the water. There's poop in it.
And things that eat the poop and live in the poop.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?